How dare you ruin my reputation, you foolish son? A millionaire son named Nicole presents a homeless orphan, Betty, to his parents as the love of his life. What his mother did shocked everyone. Before we dive into the story, please subscribe, like, and comment below where you are watching from. Enjoy the rest of the story. Nicole had just completed his education at Oxford University, one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. As the only child of his parents, there was great expectation on his shoulders. His father, a powerful and wealthy politician, was not too concerned about Nicole's choice of a wife. He believed his son was wise enough to make the right decision. However, Nicole's mother had a different mindset. Coming from a poor background herself, she had struggled before marrying into wealth. Now that she was part of high society, she refused to let her son marry below his status. She believed Nicole needed a wife from an influential family, someone who could uphold their reputation and bring even more prestige to their name. Now that Nicole was done with school, his mother had already started introducing him to daughters of rich businessmen, politicians, and royalty. She was determined to see him settle down with a woman who matched their status. But Nicole had other plans. Unknown to his parents, he had fallen in love with someone completely unexpected: Betty, a homeless orphan. It was finally time for Nicole to reveal his choice. He knew his decision would shock his family, but he was prepared to stand by it. However, what his mother said when she met Betty would change everything in ways no one could have imagined. Nicole first met Betty on a rainy evening in the city. He had been driving home from a business meeting when he noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench by the roadside. She was shivering, her clothes torn and dirty, and she clutched a small bag as if it contained her entire life. Something about her caught his attention. Unlike most people who ignored the rain or rushed past, she sat quietly, her eyes filled with both sadness and strength. Nicole pulled over, stepped out of his luxury car, and walked toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Betty looked up, startled. She wasn't used to people noticing her, let alone someone as well-dressed as Nicole. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice was weak. Nicole wasn't convinced. "Where do you live?" She hesitated before answering. "Nowhere." His heart tightened. He had always lived in comfort, never knowing what it meant to be homeless. Without thinking twice, he offered her a place to stay, promising to help her find work. Betty refused at first, unsure if she could trust him, but something about Nicole's kindness made her say yes. And that was the beginning of a story neither of them could have predicted. One evening, as Nicole sat in the luxurious living room of his family's mansion, he decided it was time to have the long-awaited conversation with his parents. He leaned back on the velvet sofa, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "Mom, Dad," he began, looking at them seriously, "I'm ready to bring home the woman I want to marry." His father, reading the newspaper, barely reacted. "That's good, son," he said with a nod. "I trust you've made a wise choice." His mother, however, straightened up in her chair, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Oh, finally," she said with excitement. "You took your time? I assume she's from a respectable family?" Nicole smiled but didn't answer directly. "I want you to meet her first. Then you can decide what you think." His mother's excitement grew. "She must be from one of the families I introduced you to, right? The governor's daughter? Or maybe Mr. Okafor's niece?" Nicole shook his head. "No, Mom. She's someone I met on my own." His mother's smile faded. "And who exactly is she?" Nicole hesitated for a moment, then said firmly, "You'll meet her soon." His mother's expression darkened. "Nicole, I hope you're not planning to bring someone beneath us." Nicole remained calm, but his father finally looked up from his newspaper. "As long as she makes you happy, son, I have no objections." His mother, however, was far from convinced. She had no idea that the woman her son was bringing home was a homeless orphan, someone she would never approve of. Meanwhile, Betty was unaware of everything. Nicole hadn't told her about his plans to marry her. He wanted it to be a surprise, something that would change her life forever. But he had no idea just how shocking his mother's reaction would be when the day finally came. Nicole drove through the dimly lit streets, his fingers tapping against the steering wheel. He had rehearsed this moment over and over in his head. Tonight was the night he would ask Betty to be his wife. But something in his heart told him this wouldn't be as easy as he imagined. Arriving at the apartment complex, he took a deep breath before stepping inside. Betty was seated by the window, staring into the distance. She didn't even turn when he entered, as if lost in a world of her own. "Thinking again?" he asked, his voice light, but he already knew the answer. Betty sighed. I still don't know why you do all this for me." Nicole walked over and took her hands. "Because I love you, Betty, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a stunning diamond ring. Betty gasped, her breath catching in her throat. But instead of joy, a shadow crossed her face. "Nicole, I can't," she whispered, pulling away. His heart dropped. "What do you mean?" Betty shook her head. "Your mother will never accept me. I have nothing, Nicole. No family, no name. People like me. We don't belong in your world." Nicole took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. "Betty, listen to me. I don't care about any of that. I love you. My father will support us, and my mother, she'll have to accept it eventually." Betty let out a shaky laugh. "You don't know your mother as well as you think, Nicole. Some people never change." Nicole frowned. "What are you saying?" Betty hesitated, biting her lip. Then, after a long pause, she spoke words that sent a chill down Nicole's spine. "Nicole, I've met your mother before." Silence filled the room. Nicole's body stiffened. "What?" Betty looked away. I didn't know who she was at the time. It was a long time ago, before I met you. But I'll never forget her face, or what she did to me." Nicole's heartbeat pounded in his ears. "Betty, what are you talking about?" She turned to him, tears pooling in her eyes. "Your mother. She's the reason I ended up on the streets." Nicole felt the ground shift beneath him. Suddenly, everything he thought he knew about his own family was about to be questioned. Nicole felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He stared at Betty, hoping he had misheard her. "My mother?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Betty wiped a tear from her cheek and nodded. "Yes, Nicole. Your mother is the reason I lost everything." Nicole shook his head in disbelief. "That's impossible. My mother would never—" "She would," Betty interrupted. And she did. Nicole's hands balled into fists. "Tell me everything." Betty took a deep breath, her voice shaky as she spoke. "It happened years ago, when I was just a little girl. My parents worked as housekeepers for a wealthy family. We lived in the servants' quarters, and though we weren't rich, we were happy. But one day, my father was accused of stealing from his employer. It was a lie, Nicole, a setup. And do you know who made the final decision to throw us out?" Nicole's throat tightened. "No, it can't be." Betty nodded. "It was your mother, Nicole. She stood there, watching as security dragged us out. We begged for mercy, but she turned her back on us. My father never recovered from the humiliation. He died months later. My mother followed not long after. I was left alone on the streets with nothing but the clothes on my bag." Nicole's mind raced. He wanted to deny it, to believe it was some terrible mistake. But deep down, something in Betty's voice told him she was telling the truth. His mother, the woman he had admired his whole life, had destroyed the life of the woman he loved. Betty sniffled. "Now, do you understand why I can't marry you? Your mother will never accept me, Nicole, and even if she did, I could never forgive her." Nicole clenched his jaw, his heart pounding. He wasn't just angry, he was furious. He had to get to the truth. "Betty, I love you," he said firmly. "And I won't let the past decide our future. We're going to my parents' house tomorrow. I need to hear the truth from my mother's mouth." Betty looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. "And what if she denies it?" Nicole's voice was cold and determined. "Then I'll know the kind of person she really is." Betty swallowed hard. She knew this was going to end badly, but there was no turning back now. The next day, the truth would finally come to light. Inside the luxurious mansion, tension filled the air. Nicole's mother sat with her arms crossed, her eyes filled with judgment as she studied Betty. His father, ever calm, observed the scene quietly. Nicole cleared his throat. "Mom, Dad, I want you to meet Betty, the woman I love. His mother scoffed. This girl? She said coldly. Nicole, surely this is a joke. It's not a joke, Nicole said firmly. I love her, and I want to marry her. His mother's expression darkened. You think you can bring some homeless girl into our family? Do you know what people will say? Betty clenched her fists, fighting back tears. She had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. Nicole's father sighed. Let's not judge so quickly. Maybe we should get to know her first. Nicole's mother shook her head. She doesn't belong here, and I won't allow it. Betty suddenly found her voice. You look down on me because of where I come from, she said softly. But you don't even know me. Nicole's mother laughed bitterly. And why should I? I don't need to know you to see what you are. Nicole's father frowned. That's enough. Just then, one of the maids entered with a tray of drinks. As she bent to place the glasses on the table, she accidentally bumped into Betty, causing Betty to spill juice all over herself. Betty gasped. Oh! Nicole quickly grabbed a napkin. Are you okay? I'm fine, Betty murmured. The maid panicked. I'm so sorry. Let me help you clean that. Before Betty could react, the maid reached for a cloth and gently wiped Betty's back. But as she did, her hands froze. Her eyes widened in shock. Nicole's mother noticed the maid's strange reaction. What is it? She asked sharply. The maid hesitated. Madam, there's a scar on her back. A deep one. Nicole's mother's heart stopped. A scar? She whispered. Betty frowned. What are you talking about? Nicole's mother felt her world tilt. Her breath came in short gasps as memories rushed back. A crying baby. A cold night. A moment of anger. A deep mark she had made before she abandoned her child. Her hands trembled. Show me, she demanded. Betty hesitated. Show you what? Your back, Nicole's mother said, her voice barely a whisper. Confused, Betty turned slightly. Nicole's father moved closer, concern on his face. Then, as Nicole's mother's eyes fell on the scar, she let out a strangled gasp. No, she whispered, stumbling back. No, it can't be. Everyone stared at her in shock. Nicole took a step forward. Mom, what's wrong? Tears streamed down her face. She covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head as if denying the truth. I gave her that scar, she choked out. Betty is my daughter. The room fell silent. Betty's heart stopped. What did you say? She whispered. Nicole's father's face paled. Are you sure? Nicole's mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I was 19. I had a child, but I was too young, too scared. The father denied the pregnancy. I was desperate. So I left her. And before I did, she let out a shaky breath. I was angry. So angry. I marked her. Betty touched her back, her fingers trembling. No, this is a lie. My mother was the woman who found you? Nicole's mother interrupted. I abandoned you. Nicole's hands clenched into fists. His whole world was falling apart. His mother and the woman he loved were mother and daughter. His love for Betty was impossible. Betty's vision blurred with tears. The woman who had rejected her, humiliated her, and made her feel unworthy was her own mother. Everything had changed. Betty's mind is a chaotic mess of emotions. Anger, bitterness, and confusion swirled in her heart. How could her mother have treated her like this? How could she have abandoned her own child on a cold, dark street without a second thought? She couldn't understand it, and the more she thought about it, the more furious she became. Without thinking, she headed straight to her mother. You are wicked, heartless. You don't deserve to be a mother, Betty shouted at the top of her lungs. Her words echoed off the walls as they struck her mother like a physical blow. You left your own child in the street to suffer. You may have given birth to me, but you can never be my mother. Her voice trembled with the force of her emotion, and the words were sharp like knives. They cut deep, and she knew they would wound her mother in a way she couldn't begin to understand. But at that moment, Betty didn't care. She needed to express her pain. She needed her mother to know how badly she had failed her. Betty's mother, Nicole's mother, stood there in stunned silence. The words stung more than anything she had ever felt. It wasn't just the anger in her daughter's voice. It was the betrayal, the feeling of being caught in the web of her own lies. For so long she had thought she could hide the truth, but it was clear now that Betty had uncovered it. Nicole's father, standing nearby, was also in shock. He hadn't expected this confrontation to unravel so brutally. The news, the truth that Betty had just revealed were too much for him to bear. He staggered back, his face ashen, and then, without warning, he collapsed. Nicole's mother rushed to his side, but it was clear he had fainted, overcome with the shock of the situation. Betty, her face twisted in anger, turned on her heels and left the mansion, not bothering to look back. She needed time, space, to process the reality of what she had just discovered. It felt as if her whole world had been turned upside down. Nicole and his mother rushed to his father's side, panic taking over. His mother quickly called for an ambulance, and within minutes, they were at the hospital. Nicole could barely keep his composure as the doctor ran a series of tests. The waiting room felt suffocating, every tick of the clock making his heart race faster. Finally, the doctor came in with the results. "Your father's condition is serious," the doctor said, his voice grave. "He's going to need 2 pints of blood to stabilize him. His blood pressure was dangerously high from the shock. We'll need to take care of him immediately." Nicole didn't hesitate. "I'll donate the blood," he said firmly, his mind already reeling from the revelations that had shaken his entire life. The doctor nodded, acknowledging Nicole's willingness to help. As the medical team began their work, Nicole felt as if he was losing control of everything. His father, the man who had raised him, who had given him a life of privilege and comfort, might not even be his biological father. How could this be? His mind couldn't make sense of it. After hours of testing and waiting, the results finally came back. Nicole's worst fears were confirmed. His father was not his biological parent. The doctor had pulled him aside to explain the situation, his voice sympathetic yet clinical. "I'm afraid the tests show that your father isn't your biological father. I know this is difficult to hear, but it's the truth. We'll run a DNA test to confirm, but the signs are clear." Nicole, in disbelief, took a moment to process the words. "So, does this mean I'm not his son?" he asked quietly, as if afraid to hear the answer. The doctor paused before responding. "I'm afraid so, but the DNA test will give you the final answer." Nicole's heart sank as the weight of the truth bore down on him. His life, his entire identity, had been based on a lie. How could he have been so blind? How could he have not seen that something was amiss? His mother, who had been there beside him through the ordeal, already knew the truth. She had known for years, but she had kept it hidden, thinking she could protect herself and her position in the family. Nicole's biological father had been a poor man, someone she had loved deeply but who couldn't offer her the life she craved. So, she had lied. She had claimed Nicole as her husband's son, knowing full well the man who had raised him was not his real father. Karma, Nicole thought bitterly, was coming for her. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down around her. After paying for the DNA test and ensuring the blood donation was taken care of for his father, Nicole left the hospital. He didn't feel any better. In fact, he felt worse. His world had shattered into pieces, and he didn't know how to put it back together. Back at the mansion, Nicole sat in the parlor, his thoughts racing. Was this really happening? Was he truly not his father's son? The man who had raised him, who had given him everything he had, wasn't his real father. And yet, all this time, he had loved him as his own. It felt like a betrayal of the deepest kind. "I will never forgive her," he whispered to himself, his voice low but filled with venom. "I'll make sure she pays for this. She'll pay with her life." His mind was spinning, and before he knew it, he had freshened up and decided to return to the hospital. This time, he was not alone. He brought one of the maids with him, a woman who had been loyal to his family for years, but he trusted her in this moment of his life when everything felt uncertain. 4 days later, they were finally discharged from the hospital. Nicole's father was stable, but still weak. The DNA test results, however, were the only thing that weighed heavily on Nicole's mind. When they arrived at home, Nicole couldn't bring himself to look at the envelope. The truth was there, in black and white, waiting for him. He knew it would hurt, but he couldn't avoid it. With trembling hands, Nicole opened the letter. He read the results carefully, his eyes scanning the words that confirmed his worst fears. He wasn't his father's biological son. The results were irrefutable. He felt a surge of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal, all of them mixing together, making it hard to breathe. He was devastated. The man who had been his father wasn't really his father at all. His whole life had been a lie. Without saying a word, Nicole stood up, his face pale, and walked toward his mother's room. He could barely control the rage building inside him. His hands clenched into fists as he approached her door, ready to confront her with the truth. "You evil woman!" he shouted, his voice shaking with fury. "Where are you? You deceived my father. You lied to all of us." His mother, who had been dreading this moment for years, heard the fury in his voice. She stood frozen in place, unable to speak, as Nicole continued to shout. "You thought you could hide the truth forever?" Nicole's voice trembled with emotion. "Hell no. Your cup is filled today. Everything you've done is coming to light." His mother tried to beg, to plead for him to keep quiet, but it was too late. The truth had been uncovered, and Nicole wasn't going to let her escape it. "You deceived him," he spat, his voice filled with disgust. "You destroyed everything. And now I will make sure my father knows the truth. You can't hide anymore." His mother begged him, promising she wouldn't let it get out to his father. She didn't want to lose her position in the family, her life of luxury. "Please don't tell your father," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I can't lose everything. I'll do anything." Nicole stood silently for a moment, contemplating her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice cold and unwavering. "I'll tell him when he's fully recovered. But you will pay for what you've done. You won't get away with this." His mother's heart sank as she realized that the truth, once out, could never be erased. The years of deception had finally caught up with her. Would Nicole reveal the truth to his father? Would he choose revenge? Or would he forgive her for the sake of family? Only time would tell.